Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished entrepreneur from India, Mr. Sunith Reddy. Sunith, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thanks for inviting me on this platform.
Thank you. Sunith is the co-founder of Beforest Lifestyle Solutions Private Limited. So Sunith, let's talk today about Beforest. Tell me a little bit about this venture and what was your motivation to start?
Sure. Beforest builds landscapes to be fully food, water, and power secure for its inhabitants, its stakeholders, which includes our animals, flora, fauna, everything. So what that means is we are looking at that landscape as we're considering all the stakeholders that are involved, and especially for the people who want to live there. This is a different way of life that they are exposing them to, where they are solving a lot of their own problems. A lot of these problems that they face in an urban landscape, the traffic, the water struggle in the summers, the flooding in the rains, all of that. We are trying to go back to the zero level and try to reimagine everything from the start.
Okay.
So what it typically translates to is we set up these things called collectives, where we invite interested participants to come and help us design a landscape where we are setting up our own water sources, our own power sources. We grow our own food. And this is not some utopian commune. We are talking about everyday mainstream living, people working out of there as well, for those who are interested.
So before I come to the advantages of collective farming and the communes that you are developing through Beforest, what was the problem that you saw? And what are some of the solutions you have developed?
Sure. I've lived in Mumbai for almost 11 years. And before that, Delhi, Bangalore, Calcutta, Chennai, born in Hyderabad. So I've seen in the 6 major countries, and I've been surprised by the common threads or cribs that people have in your general course of conversation, right? And it's very stark contrast. Like most people complain about flooding and how the roads get inundated with water every rains, and then a few months later you have summer and your apartments or complexes, all of them drawing on water tankers. So this basic the resource crunch for life's basic needs, that sort of surprised me. And what I also noticed is almost everyone is concerned about it. So there's this very large circle of concern, as I call it. And within that, I saw multiple people solving small parts of this problem on a small scale. Right. So there were those who solved the water problem for their own apartment or society in very unique ways. There were those who were growing their own food and so on, right? And as I got talking to more and more people, I realized that if we could bring all these solutions and sort of orchestrate a larger plan, then you would actually redefine the template. And the trigger point, I think, for me was, I come from Telangana, and the whole need for a separate state has been triggered by the want for water.
Correct.
But when I go to Coorg, which is probably the wettest place on earth, or in the country at least, I saw the plantation owners talk about the same problems. Their borewells running dry, labor not being, manpower requirements, and all of these things. So I realized that that was my aha moment, where I realized, it's not a problem of circumstance. It's the template that has gone wrong.
Correct.
And that's when we started seeing, okay, let's throw away all the assumptions that we think we need and look at things completely. Like if we were to be the first men who plant towns, how would we do it?
So let's talk a little more let's go a little deeper. Let's take your first project that you took. You picked up X number of acres, you invited people to buy some of those acres, and then you started giving common facilities. Is that my understanding?
Yes. We didn't buy it outright. So it's the other way around. We invited people with this idea that we want to do something in Coorg. And those interested and bought into the idea contributed capital also. And then we bridged the gap and bought the estate.
Okay. And so would you say this is something like a real estate play from your perspective, or is it a sustainability play?
So in some sense, yes, there is real estate involved. But when you look at it, it's really one of the raw materials that we're using. So we are not, I think our fundamental goal is to make the land sustainable. So it's essentially a sustainability play. The members, the houses, the structure that is involved, all of that is just a byproduct, a necessary byproduct that happens. But the main aim is to really see how we can exist while restoring the landscape.
So going further, you've now invited a few people, you've taken this whole piece of land. Yeah. What are the next steps that you do?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, the first step is we just announce an idea. We want to do something in Coorg, who's interested. And an idea that is a little more concrete in a sense, we know that there'll be a certain price point. This is the capital we expect from each member who comes in. And then we ask people to come forward and actually give us what we call as a commitment fee, which is not really money being transferred, but a post-dated check of a certain amount, which is a show of commitment. We are not going to encash it, but it's just a method where we know people are serious. If we really find a place, they're coming in. So when we imagine a landscape of, say, 100 acres with 50 members in it, we expect to have at least 25% of them come in at this stage. It's a good filter for us to wean out people who are looking at it as an investment asset class and get in only those who are really coming in at a concept level. After that, once we have that 25%, we start doing the groundwork, identifying the right estate, seeing what the prices are really working out to, and all the due diligence effort comes there. Sometimes, very rarely, it does happen that we think of an idea and the 25% doesn't happen. At that point, we just call off. It is no stones turned and no harm done.
Okay. And do you already have some projects running with people living there?
No. So we have projects that are almost there. Like our Coorg one is almost there. We expect people to be living there by 2024. The construction is underway of their houses. But the plantation wise, the diversification wise, the effort is, it's almost 90% done. And the food forest is in action as we speak. It's yielding produce. We are even retailing our coffee from Coorg, which is perhaps India's only known wild coffee, so to say. Like, we don't really put water also. It's naturally surviving like it would in a forest.
Very interesting. So, again, when I was preparing for this interview with you, I was reading about farming collectives, and there seem to be many all over the world. What is unique about Beforest's farming collective?
I think so. There are a couple of things unique, and the first thing I would say is the starting point for us. The idea behind it's not just about farming. What we realized is we started off like any of the other farming collectives, just a bunch of people who were looking to grow something, right? But the moment we started doing natural methods, we realized we're solving a lot of day-to-day problems also. The water tables are rising. It's just becoming a more abundant landscape.
Okay.
So in that sense, that is when we started Beforest. So the first experimental collective happened before the company was formed. So that's something that was unique. So we felt we have these processes that can actually be scaled up.
So, when I was preparing for this interview, there were a lot of, I read about farming collectives, and a lot of people seem to be doing what you're doing. What is unique about the farming collective of Beforest?
So there are a lot of farming collectives, and most of them have started off as farmers who are coming together to achieve a common purpose. Here, I think the starting point was different. Here, it's an urban audience who's participating in a farm. In that sense, we are bringing together people who would have not gone down this path otherwise. So it's a platform to achieve their, larger goals in that sense. The second thing also is the method that we are following, permaculture, to create food from forests. It has not been done to this level of detail at this scale. To the best of my knowledge, I think we are probably the largest permaculture farm, our estates. And why it has not been done also is because to a large extent, it has been a very subjective methodology where it's a lot of subjective calls being taken, which as a company, we've broken it down into quantifiable parameters. So when we think of building check dams or any other interventions, we are not just deciding on a manual level. It's not one expert who goes and says, I think this has to be it. It's a framework where looking at the stream bed level, the soil quality, all of that, there is a grid and it points you to the right direction. So that studies over the last 2-3 years, what works best, we have broken it down to a great level. And we continue to do so. We are evolving in that direction.
Okay.
And the third point that is really unique about us, I feel, is we are falling into this real estate space, although we are a farming collective. And that's a good thing, according to me, because we are able to achieve that level of efficiency, even if you look at housing, without thinking of it as a set of buildings. In spite of looking at it as a healthy landscape, restoring it, we are still able to put together the same number of houses that any other similar real estate project would have done. So that, I think, is a big plus point for our collectives.
Okay. My next question, Q, is that how do you measure return on investment when you are a pure real estate play and yet you're offering so many other value adds?
Yes. So that's the question that puzzled us too, because we want to go beyond financial returns, right? So we came across this very interesting philosophy that we have adopted now, which is called the 4 returns framework, which measures financial returns, return of investment along financial, social, natural, and inspiration.
Right.
These are the 4 axes.
Right.
And that's what we have adopted to an Indian context, to all our collectives.
Okay.
And what's been very interesting to see is when you look at a 20-year time frame, it's almost not possible to have economic viability without social and natural going along with it. At least at scale. When we are not talking about a small little farm breaking even.
Sure.
So that's been our biggest learning.
Okay. The other thing that I wanted to ask you is that for people who come and make an investment with you, what is in it for them? I mean, what do they get out of this other than, of course, a very, very nice place to live in?
Yeah, I think we're very clear with everyone we talk to as a prospective member that the decision to own a farm should have been done before talking to us. So we are not trying to sell the idea of owning a farm, but just the idea that this is the best way of owning a farm. So that's the big difference in terms of the interaction, because for them, they want to own a farm and we're just pointing them in the right direction. Right? And through experience, they will come to realize that they're getting the advantage of a much larger farm. Like every member is really participating with a 1.5 acre capital, but actually owning a 100-200 acre farm and experiencing it. So in terms of experience, they have that much larger canvas to play with. And it's not some finished product that we are giving. We actually collaborate with our members, even enable them to execute their ideas also. So in effect, they are owners of a much larger landscape at the price of a much smaller one.
So what you're saying is that these are not earmarked plots.
No, they are not.
It's a big, large, rolling kind of landscape, and they have their own apartments there on it.
Yes, absolutely. It's an undivided interest that we are very clear about, even in terms of the title also, except for the house and the land that it sits on. Everything else is a common undivided interest.
Okay. And, there have been 1 or 2 instances that I was again reading about where when there are in a country like ours, where people tend to have lots of disagreements, especially when it comes to land, how do you propose to handle dissonance where your and my land is not very clearly demarcated?
Actually, it's worked in our advantage because the first template we started off with is divided land share, because that's what we knew. And when we started creating the lakes and the commons that we saw, then the questions were raised that why should my land go underwater? And that's when we proposed that how about making it all undivided? But when 50 people come into a room to discuss something, there is bound to be some kind of a debate or even an argument. And what we have come to realize is like-mindedness is just it's a concept. No two people are alike completely. They just have overlapping interests. So what works in our favor is this whole idea. I'm a numbers guy. I come from the finance world. So this focus on breaking everything down into a quantifiable metric. So where even sustainability or even natural capital, you're really talking in terms of how much is the soil moisture improving in Hyderabad versus what is the erosion that's happening in Coorg. So in that sense, so when decisions have to be made, we just have to make sure that these parameters are not violated. So very often numbers, it reduces down to numbers and they don't lie. So the arguments are resolved. So far, we've been able to bring consensus that way. But in the event that that does not happen, it will function like any other LLP or a company, right? It would have its committee and the votes would work their way.
Fair enough. Well said. So I have time for two more questions. My next question is, how many collectives do you have right now, and are there plans to go all over the country?
Currently, we are working on 3 collectives with the 4th one planned in Coorg as well. That will be the 2nd one in Coorg. We are also considering collectives in Chikmagalur, Bhopal, and somewhere up north. There has been plenty of interest from across the country. But we don't want to spread ourselves too thin. We want to make sure that we are doing what we are doing, we do it well, and then probably spread out. We are pretty young. We are just 3 years old, so we're not in a rush.
Well said. And my last question to you is from the perspective of you being an entrepreneur, and this is for the many people who will listen to our conversation. What would you say are 3 lessons you would like our viewers to take away from our conversation from the perspective of an entrepreneur?
One is, again, I would come back to numbers, not lying. And we often make this mistake where we so believe in that idea that we ignore the flags. And I think it's important for someone, for a decision maker, if not an entrepreneur also, just being in a decision maker space, to be a little detached on that front, at least while making the call. Okay. And numbers go a long way. Then the second, that is very important to me is having a sense of purpose is the most critical thing, is what I feel. And I've learned it. This is a recent learning for me. And I heard someone say that the purpose of a car is not to burn diesel. It's to get from A to B.
Correct.
So we need to know what that B is and that sense of purpose to get there. And I've often seen, even me personally, I've definitely started off with a number in mind that I want to make this company this big, make it, revenue number. But I think what motivates me in a lot of places is there is definitely a larger vision, and the money is more like a byproduct. So that sense of purpose has to come first. It's super critical for any company to grow.
Wonderful. Sunith, on that note, thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about the amazing work you are doing, creating these farming collectives, and probably not just giving great safe places with great environment to people, but also doing some amazing work for climate, for sustainability, which is so critical for all of us. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.